Circulatory system. This includes the heart and the blood, of course, and the blood vessels. And there's quite a bit to it, but we're not going to go into it too deeply. So just take away what you want to. Okay, we're looking at the first picture now on the document that you've got, the PowerPoint. It talks about the circulatory system, includes the heart, blood tissues, and the blood vessels, and you've got a picture of the heart there. And in the middle, you can see the red donut shape, and that's the red blood cells. That's what carries the oxygen and many other things, as we're going to learn, around the body. So we're looking at the next one now, slide 2, and you can see the blue, the blue and the red arrows. Can you see that on the heart? That is the heart. And you can see the blue, that's the deoxygenated blood. And then the red is the oxygenated blood on the other side, because the heart is divided up, as you're probably aware. It's divided up into the left and the right side. And one side takes in the blue blood, the deoxygenated, and the other side takes in the red blood. We'll talk about that more, obviously, but I think that's a good little illustration, actually. So the blood takes everything around the body. It's like a train. It takes around the hormones, oxygen, carbon dioxide, all sorts of things around your body. It's a transport system, very handy one. So just like this skin has got a function, if you've done the skin already, you'll know the functions of the skin and the functions of the bones and the muscles, and the circulatory system has got its own really important function that I've just touched on. And in the next slide, it talks about delivering the food and oxygen to the body cells, because the food that we eat doesn't just come in and go out again. It has to actually feed the body, doesn't it? So it comes out of the small intestine because it gets so small, it has to be tiny, you can imagine, and it flows out and it ends up in the system, so that your muscles and bones and all nerves, everything needs to have oxygen, it needs hormones, it needs all the minerals, all the vitamins. That's all carried around in the blood. And the oxygen is carried around, we take that in, don't we, in through the lungs, and then the carbon dioxide is expelled, but it isn't just pure oxygen and pure carbon dioxide. There's a huge balance going on, and it's gobsmacking, actually, how it all works. Let's have a look at the next one then. This has got a really good illustration of a little car with some oxygen on the back. So in general, as it says, the food, the blood is classed as a tissue, just as there's bone tissue, there's muscle tissue, and blood is actually classed as a tissue because it's like an organ, but it's fluid, and its job is to help maintain homeostasis, which is the body balancing. It goes through our hormone system, which is just amazing, and it reads. There's a tiny little pituitary in your brain, and the blood goes through it, and it reads to see what your body is in need of. Like here, your thyroid here, and the parathyroid glands are on there. The blood goes through, and it's like a meter, and it reads, and it thinks, oh, you need this or you need that, and because the body is a movable feast. Things come in and things go out. It's not just going in and going out. It's orchestrated. So looking at 5 now, and it speaks about the heart functions as a double pump, beating in unison So the deoxygenated blood is lower in oxygen, and the oxygenated blood is relatively high in oxygen. But it looks, in the diagrams, it looks blue and red, but of course in real life it all looks red. It's just for illustration that it's shown to be blue, because that's the deoxygenated blood. So it's oxygen taken out, but it has got oxygen in it. So our heartbeat is actually stimulated by electrical impulse. We've got our own pacemaker. Although people can have a pacemaker put in, we have got a pacemaker, and that initiates the heartbeat. And not only does it transport water and carbon dioxide and urea around the body, it also helps us to maintain temperature. Because what happens when you're cold, your blood, you go very pale, don't you, when you're cold? Well, your blood is sucked into to protect your organs, because your organs definitely need to be kept warm. And so then if you feel hot, your blood goes to the surface. You probably might remember this from the skin, because it's obviously it's working with the skin. So the blood comes to the surface and you get all red. And that's so that your body can cool down, get some air, and help to maintain this constant temperature that your organs need to be able to work properly. And of course, the blood is also taking around cells that help you to fight disease. We've got a huge immune system going on. Looking at slide 7, we've got the anatomy of the heart, and it's, as we see, it's divided up into chambers. We've got the atrium at the top, and I always think of like a office block that's maybe got an atrium at the top, and that helped me to remember atrium. And the heart has got 2 ventricles, which are the lower chambers. And these ventricles got very thick walls. And you can see there the right atrium. There, the blood enters into the top here. That thick blue pipe, that is the superior vena cava, and the blood enters the heart from there, having travelled around the body. See, your blood has done its job. Once it's done its job, it comes back to the right atrium, and it always fills up, the heart always fills up at the top, just like a glass or a cup. You always fill it up from the top, right? So into the vena cava, and then into the right atrium, and then into the right ventricle. And from there, because it's blue, that blue blood, it needs oxygen, and so it will be pumped up to the lungs to get oxygen, and then it comes back into the heart again by the left atrium, and then into the left ventricle and out again. And you see that the way that the pump is going, it says left ventricle. I'm on slide 7, and it goes up, and then you've got these 3, it reminds me of a cow's udder upside down actually, but that is the aorta. Have you heard of the aorta? It's a fantastic, thick blood vessel coming out of the heart, and it's about 1 inch in diameter. It's enormous, enormous. And I seem to have lost the, here we are. And those on that slide 7, and it's got what I said looks like a, reminded me of milking a cow for some reason, upside down a cow's udder, but they are going to the body. We've got one, the main one going to the head, the carotid, and the others going to other parts of our body. But this huge aorta here is feeding the rest of our body. So our heart has actually got a septum inside, and this is our septum on the nose. So it divides up. We've got atrium at the top, ventricles at the bottom, and then we've got valves in there that stop the, just imagine it in any plumbing, you've got a valve to stop the backflow so that once it goes, it's gone. And they're the parts of the heart. That's all that we need to know. And it's covered by a very thin sac. It can't just be in there, just hanging around. It's got a thin sac called the pericardium. And I expect you've heard of the pericardium. And you can see the illustration of the heart on this slide 9. And the heart is about the size of your fist. So that gives you an idea. And then we've got more pictures now of the aortic loop there at the top, and then the valves and the atrium at the top. Slide 11 has got a bit more detail in it. You can see there the aorta, and that one that are called the superior vena cava, the large one at the top, the blue. And it shows you there the atrium and the valves. There's the inferior vena cava. Can you see that at the bottom? So they're not, it's not because it's any less important than the superior. It's just the way they talk about it in anatomical terms. It's superior because it's above and inferior because it's below the heart. It's just so that it's just the name it's given. So there's an interesting illustration of the heart, and also the cardiac muscle that's around the heart. There's an illustration here on slide 12 that might help you to understand and get where everything is. Everyone will be looking at this in a different way. We've got blood vessels that are called arteries and veins. We've all heard of that, haven't we? Well, arteries carry blood away from the heart, and the arteries have got muscular walls and they're elastic, and this is why if you cut yourself an artery, it will spurt because it's being pumped away from the heart. The illustration there, it shows the carotid artery at the top going in to feed your head. There's the aorta, the really thick aorta. And we've got the artery. See the aorta, it comes underneath the heart there. See how thick it is? And it branches down. So the iliac artery down there, and then the femoral, that's, remember the name of the largest bone in the body, the femur? Well, that's the femoral artery. And here we have, oh, you see the brachial artery. Anything brachial is to do with the arms. Let's have a look now at slide 15, which is talking about the veins, which carries blood towards the heart. So remember I mentioned earlier about the blood, once it's gone back to the heart, it needs to go to the lungs, and then back to the heart again. Or the veins carry the blood towards the heart from the body, and they contain valves as well. because you see the valves when they go wrong, or you see the fact that they've gone wrong in varicose veins, because the veins, when someone's standing a long time, the vein is thinner than arteries. The arteries have got muscular walls and veins have got thin walls, but they have got valves, which are like little U-shaped things you can imagine inside, to put it simply for us. And so the blood can go up and not go back. But if someone's standing for a long time, that valve gets very weak and the walls get thinner and thinner, and that's when you get varicose veins, because, and it's standing up a long time, because your blood needs to go all the way from your feet and your legs back up to your heart, because your heart is the pump and it's pumped it out to go around your body, but then it goes down there. Well, the pump for your lower body is actually the gastrocnemius, which is your calf muscle, and walking along stimulates that movement and pushes the blood back up again. Breathing does it. I mean, it's not that it's not going to circulate if you don't walk around. Some people can't walk around, can they? But that's how it does move around the body, mostly is by the movement. As it says there, it depends upon the muscle and the diaphragm movement. So that's the breathing for blood flow. And on slide 16, you've got this illustration of that where the veins become more apparent. We've got the famous jugular vein on the throat, and that's easier to cut than the carotid, because the carotid is deep inside. The arteries are in the main, very deep inside your body. So the jugular vein is the one that can be easily cut. And then we've got the vena cava that we've spoken about before, and the inferior one at the bottom. But you can see it's going, this is going the other way, of course, because the red, if you see the aorta, for instance, coming from the heart, this thick trunk is coming down, and that's feeding the rest of the body. And this, the blue, if you like, is coming up the other way, because it's done its job, fed all the muscles, bones, nerves, and it's on its way back up again. So we've got arteries, and we've got veins, and we've also got capillaries, which are tiny, microscopic, and they're 1 cell thick. And this is where everything gets exchanged. That's where the food has to be so tiny that it goes into the capillary. And the capillary, if you can make this out at the bottom here of slide 17, because I think it shows it really well actually. We've got the arteries and the veins represented by the blue and red. Well, the veins, as they get smaller, they start off big and then they get smaller. They can't just go from a big vein into a tiny capillary. They go into venules, which are small veins, and the arteries go into arterioles. And this is how they meet. So they're baby arteries, if you like, and baby venules, and they meet, and this is where there is an exchange then of oxygen, because one's lost oxygen and one needs it, and that's how it feeds. Well, we'll also talk briefly about the lymph cells. That this is the lymphatic system, which is really, it's part of the circulatory system, but it's a big subject really on its own right. And the lymph travels round. It doesn't have red blood cells, but it has, and what that does is bathe the body in antibodies so that we can survive. It's a huge part of our immune system. So it bathes, it's like they're blind-ended tubes that are in the body, the lymph capillaries, and they flood the body with goodness, if you like, and then they have to go back, and then they go back into the blood circulation. They're tightly woven up together. So these white blood cells and the lymphatic system are working together to give us our absolute immune system. And this is why if someone's lacking white blood cells, they can be very, very poorly. So we've got a picture here on slide 20 of an artery and the vein and how they meet up together, which I think is a beautiful illustration showing how they connect together with the capillary. One of the things we all know about is that the fact that we've got blood pressure, and we have the blood pressure taken by a sphygmomanometer, and quite often we have the cuff over our arm, and we get the systolic pressure of the ventricles contracting, and then the diastolic is the pressure during the relaxing phase, and then they measure to see how good that pressure is. And because it needs to be, it's amazing. It's a pump that never stops working until we die, and that we never have to worry about until we obviously get an illness. But usually the systolic or the systole is a good one, would be 120 over 70 diastolic, and that would be a good one. So that's the one to aim for. The high blood pressure is affected by, it says here, high salt intake. That could be up for debate. Definitely stress. Cigarettes, yes. Saturated fats. Alcohol and caffeine, for sure. Obesity, for sure. And heredity and aging, absolutely. That's why when you go to the doctor, they ask if there's this or that in the family, because a lot of things are hereditary. So blood, as it says here on slide 23, is a tissue made out of blood cells and blood plasma, and it makes up 7% of your body mass. And men have got 5.5 litres and women have got 4.5. Pregnant women have actually got more than normal, which is one of the reasons why women get so hot when they're pregnant. And here we have a review of what I mentioned earlier about the functions of blood. It delivers nutrients, oxygen, water, minerals, hormones, and all kinds of things to your body, and it picks up waste, delivers it to the kidneys, and delivers carbon dioxide to the lungs, and it picks up heat and helps to expel it by coming to the surface of the skin, as we talked earlier. Blood has got many parts to it, and it's got the plasma in it, which is a clear straw liquid that carries everything. And then we've got the red blood cells where the gas exchange is, and the red blood cells don't go through the kidneys, for instance. They keep away from the kidneys so that just the other stuff that's in your blood goes through the kidneys, and then it joins up to the blood supply again, and the rubbish has been filtered out and comes out as urine. So we've got red blood cells, we've got white blood cells as well, which help to fight infection, and we've got platelets that help with clotting. They're also called thrombocytes. So that's a really important job for the clotting, because if you cut yourself, you want the blood to not just keep flowing. You've got a table there of the components of blood, of the water and the salts and the plasma and the different types of cell. If you have a look on the right hand side, you see the erythrocytes. That's another name for red blood cells, and we've got 5 to 6 million blood cells in like a drop of blood, and it helps to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. Well, we knew that, didn't we? And then we've got white blood cells, which are leukocytes, and there's 5,000 to 10,000 in a drop of blood. And then we've got platelets, which has got 200. Well, the figures are unimaginable, actually, and it's fantastic that they've found out just what they do and what they look like, because we've got the donut shape, we've got the leukocytes, which has got their own look, and the platelets, which are quite sharp and spiky looking, aren't they? So this is the cell part of the blood, showing the cells in there, and the white blood cell, and the plasma that it's all floating in, and the platelets as well. The red blood cell hasn't got a nucleus. And this shows the percentage here in slide 27 of blood and what it's made up. RBC, that's red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets. And then a lot of it is made up of plasma. So this one, the donut shaped one, is the most numerous, and it's even smaller than a white blood cell, but larger than a platelet. And it's produced in the marrow of the long bones. So this is where the kidneys come in, because the kidneys actually produce a hormone that tells your long bones, and the femur is one of the long bones, to produce marrow, and marrow is needed for our immunity. It ties up with our liver and spleen, as you see there, because that's where they go to die. And the spleen, well, it goes to die in the spleen, but the spleen is like a recycling plant, and it recycles everything and sends something to your liver, and the body uses it up again, and then the rubbish is sent out into the system. So the red blood cells, which has got 5 million cells in a drop of blood, most commonly, and it's made in the bone marrow, and it contains, and it brings the oxygen around your body. So slide 30, we have the white blood cells, and they're larger than the red blood cells, and there's 8,000 in one drop of blood, so there's less of them. And they surround and digest bacteria. It's like Star Wars going on, and they attack bacteria and viruses. The main white blood cell types, we've got phagocytes. You see at the side here, we've got monocytes, macrophage, mast cells, neutrophils, basophili, basophil, and they move between the cells in the body and helping to fight our corner. So platelets are also called thrombocytes that help with the clotting of the blood, and some people haven't got that ability, and some people have to take a medication to keep their blood thin because it clots too much. So we're very lucky if we don't have either of those problems, because our body is just looking after ourselves without us ever having to worry about it. So these platelets for clotting, there's 150,000 to 300,000 per drop of blood. And this is a fabulous little illustration here on slide 36 of a cut. This is illustrating a cut. This is and the red blood cells coming out, and the platelets, as soon as it realizes that there's been a cut and that they're coming out, it binds itself and clots to stop them from keep coming out. So we find it on we get broken blood vessels on our cheeks sometimes, don't we? And also we get bruises, and that's a result of these platelets coming out of where they should be, and they are then you can see them, and they're dead, and then the body has to actively clear it all away. But fortunately, the platelets have stopped it from continuing, because once they're cut, the platelets take hold and stop us from just bleeding to death. We've got a little picture here of a pacemaker that somebody could have fitted if their heart doesn't keep in rhythm. And as I say, we already have a pacemaker in us, and this little gadget here will work as our pacemaker if we need it to. It is a wonder that we're as well as we are. And the last page there gives all the disorders and diseases of the circulatory system, not all of them, but a lot of them. The myocardial infarction is another name for heart attack. We've got hypertension, hyper being high, like hypermarket is a big one, so that high blood pressure, hypo low blood pressure, low blood pressure. We've got a stroke, which is a clot that's in the brain. That could be anywhere. And then we've got, it mentions angina, sickle cell anemia, which is only for usually people with dark skin. And it's called sickle cell anemia because their red blood cells, instead of being round, go into the shape of a sickle. And it's a really dodgy condition. Yeah, we mentioned varicose veins, didn't we? And arrhythmia, irregularities in heart rhythm, haemophilia, no clotting in the blood. I hope you've liked that whiz through the blood and the circulation system and the heart and what it does. And there's a worksheet for you to do, and there'll be a little test, not much of a test, but hopefully you would have found that interesting and know more than you did before. See you for the next system.